Welcome to Marketing with Confidence. I'm your host, Marion Amies. We're going to be talking all things digital and online marketing for business owners and marketing professionals. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by your digital marketing, be sure to listen along and you'll hear tips, interviews and more that will give you the confidence to create marketing you love. Hi and welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Marion Piper. Marion is a creativity coach and copywriter. She supports creative entrepreneurs to become their most creative selves so they can communicate their world-changing ideas with confidence and passion. This podcast is a great interview on not only Marion's journey into finding her digital confidence, but how she marries digital consistency with, I guess, in some ways, digital overwhelm, or finding enough space as a creative, especially to reflect and have time to sprout creative ideas without being tied to the demands of digital marketing. I think it's a great chat and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Marion.
I am excited.
Obviously, we met, a couple of months ago, maybe longer. Who knows with the realm of time. And I just absolutely loved your energy. And, we found that we had quite a similar, how would you describe our minds?
Chaotic, maybe?
Chaotic, yes. The black
creative.
hole. Yeah. Creative is a much nicer word. Let's go with creative. I really wanted to have you on and have a chat and kind of get your journey and your story about digital confidence and where you're at. So to kick off, can you tell me a little bit about you and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So my business is under my name, so Marion Piper Creative. Creative's in the name. And I've been in business for about almost 3 years now, or maybe a touch over 3. Splitting hairs there, really. And I started by kind of doing like the classic, I'll just rinse, repeat what I have just come from. Yeah. And because that worked, so surely that will work for me, right? Lol, famous last words. So I started out by offering copywriting, and I did some illustration and a little bit of creativity coaching on the side. But I definitely wasn't really thinking about those, and people knew me as a copywriter. And so that's kind of what I just perpetuated because it was working, It was a model that I knew really well, and I made a lot of money, and that was really great, especially going into, I started just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So having something that was familiar, comfortable, stable during that time, I think was really great. And it really gave me the structure and the ability to find my feet more so in digital out on my own rather than, I suppose, as an employee within a business. So I kind of started out I gave myself permission to explore. So I really was like, I have this skill. Let's do it for a whole bunch of different businesses and see what sticks and what I like and what I enjoy doing. And then it kind of went from everyone down to, actually, I don't really want to work with corporates, down to, I would love to work with creatives, to, I really want to work with purpose-driven brands, because that was kind of sexy at the time. It still is a bit sexy. To kind of coming full circle and understanding that, my particular flavor of this work, it can apply to a lot of different businesses, and it's more about the people than what they do. Obviously with some exceptions, because I have morals and ethics. So there's a few industries I just don't touch.
Those damn morals and ethics.
They get in the way of making a lot of cash sometimes. But I'm okay with that. So I've been in this really interesting transitional phase for probably the last year as I sort of step away from the copywriting work. I still do it because I still enjoy it. But I'm a little bit more selective these days. Offering more creativity coaching and self-care. I'm trying to build out some self-care tools and also some art for people to buy, because I think that there's and I think that there's a bit of a digital saturation happening at the moment. So I'm really conscious of the format through which I deliver my work. especially because a lot of what I talk about, being creativity and trauma and growth, a lot of that stuff isn't really well served by a lot of the typical formats that we tend to see people's work come in, like courses and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it's been what I love about digital particularly is how flexible it is, and it is really easy to just test out an idea and to see it, bring it to life really quickly, which I think is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's definitely true, and definitely, I guess, reflective of other conversations I've had with you about that time, that time to sit in the thinking and not just be a go, tick the box, action orientated kind of person, which I don't know anyone like that. But having that time to let things breathe, and I think you're right, there is that almost compulsion with digital that I can put it out now, so I should, like, why would I wait? There's not even, like, I'm a dinosaur marketer, so before you had to like give it to the newspaper, and then there was like it's still like a 1 to 2 week before anything happened. None of that's there now. You verbally vomit it, and there it is for everybody. And which I guess for different people gets them into a lot of trouble. And then for other people, they're not going through those processes of testing with their ideal client, or testing with other people, or even letting their ideas really synthesize until they know what they want to go out and say, or what they want to go out and put out there as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the word compulsion is definitely true, because we're all addicted. Like, let's not like pussyfoot around the issue. we're all addicted to being online, and it takes it takes a lot of effort to step away and to not be as available, and to not be so vocal, because of that fear that if I stop talking, if I stop producing, that people will leave, which you know what, like, if we're being honest, like, people do forget, because we're all busy and there's so much noise happening all the time. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that I like the idea of just keeping a little bit of mystery to yourself, and about what you do, and also taking care of yourself, and understanding that you're more important than your mental health, and your well-being is so much more important than keeping up with the Joneses.
Absolutely.
Especially because business, not all business happens online. Actually, a lot of the best business happens behind closed doors. So in so many ways, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But and you're right. Yeah, and the incubation phase of the creative process, like I this is kind of how we met. It's like people are so afraid to sit in that space and to really dig into their ideas, and to ask those questions around, what do I think about this particular topic? What parts of my experience can I layer onto all this information that'll make it more robust and more dynamic and deeper, and also more meaningful to me. I think when you work in digital, when you're working in particularly in a service-based capacity, all the time, often we focus so much on what our clients need, and we forget to add ourselves into that equation. Especially creatively, because what the work that we do, if we want it to last, we have to be excited about it. We have to have some kind of personal buy-in. Otherwise, we just won't show up.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think in some ways there is a fear of going quiet, or a fear of I've got to get the message out. But I think also in other ways we're programmed, as you even touched on, to be always on. So by that, giving yourself that time, I know for myself, like, it's like allowing that non-productive per se time is just such a disconnect, because, there's always an email to be answered, and there's always a, something to check on, or something to wrap up, or something to post, or something to engage with, and sort of going, no, we're not going to do any of that. We're just going to spend today thinking. It's mind-blowing.
Who knew?
It's uncomfortable, like, in the best way. It's deeply uncomfortable, because I mean, I would probably write on my to-do list think so I could tick it off at the end of the day. But, it's just one
do
tick
what you got to do. Do what you got to do
for the whole day. It's like, even just talking about it, I think my blood pressure has risen, it's.
Yeah. No, I think it's our comfort levels for productivity are really interesting. And I find particularly when we are trying to bring something to life, whether it's, a business or a side hustle, or even just, your own personal creative practice, paying attention to those spikes in emotion, I think when you're faced with all these things can be really helpful to help you figure out, where your normal blocks usually are. Because if it shows up in it'll show up in one particular way over and over and over again until you pay attention to it. And so for some people, particularly when it comes to like marketing and being seen and talking about what they do, you'll often find it'll, like, if it shows up for you as, you have too many ideas, or you struggle starting, or you struggle with that first bit, chances are that's kind of what plays out in the rest of your life too.
Yeah.
Because of, how we are in one part of our life is how we are often in a lot of our parts of our life. So, or maybe you're someone who gets like stuck in the middle. Yeah. So you have a really strong start. You like come out the gate bolting and you're consistent for like 2 weeks. And then something happens and you just drop the ball. And then the fear builds up because you're like, oh, I now I'm not consistent. But even that word consistent, it doesn't mean every day. It just means regularly enough to be predictable. Yeah. So, or maybe you're someone who like struggles to press publish and to finish the damn thing. You might be sitting on like worlds of content, which, to be perfectly honest, I've been all of those people. Yeah. And sometimes often all at once.
Yeah, no, and I think as well, it does come a lot back to, I think, maybe what you like, where you derive your validation from, and I think for me, like being and just thinking about it with you, it's almost like coming back to all that childhood trauma, but being the good girl, like being reliable, showing, I was the youngest of 3, I was the only girl, so I think I had a lot of proving myself my whole childhood. So proving like I'm dependable, I'm getting it done, look at me, I did it, I ticked the box. And I think that that carries through. And it's I think last year, maybe it started this year, I sort of made the decision that every email doesn't need to be answered in the same day. Somebody, and I know that sounds so basic for some people, but for me, I had this huge pressure on myself that, if I didn't reply to every single email, even just to say, got your email, I'll be back to you soon on this, that the world would crumble, and or that people would not realize that I was on top of it and across it and all those things. So I do think that whole sort of creativity piece, and then into your kind of, your marketing piece, can sometimes also be constrained by, I guess those habits and that mindset stuff that you've had with you for so long.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned the trauma piece, because I do, but I kind of do believe that most of us, not everybody, but most of us are, traumatized children just in adults' bodies, and it does define a lot of your personality and your character traits, particularly when that trauma does happen in those formative years when your brain is developing. You do have these neural pathways that tend to fire and wire together. Because when you're younger, right, the way that you behave or react to situations become your coping mechanisms. Yeah. And those coping mechanisms, they serve you when you're younger because they save you. So the problem then happens when you get older and you get healthier and things are okay, and something happens and it triggers those old coping mechanisms and it doesn't work. Yeah. Like, for example, when you run a business and then you just keep self-sabotaging by not talking about what you do. Yeah. That is not helpful, right? So like you kind of got to go back to the source and go, well, okay, when in my life did this behavior once help me? Yeah. And then recognizing and going, well, okay, what's something else that I can replace this behavior with? Yeah, totally. So that I can, start to, see my dreams come true and stop getting in my own way. Which I think, because creativity has been my coping mechanism. I feel like it's both the poison and the antidote at the moment. Yeah. which a lot of people, I know a lot of other creative entrepreneurs often face, is when you you have such a hugely, deeply personal connection to the work that you do, particularly if you're a designer or a copywriter. It can be really hard to gain the perspective that you need to take a step back and allow yourself to really see it for what it is, see the work for what it is, not as an extension of you, but as something separate to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so big. I get served a lot of the TikToks on sort of, your habits now and where they're formed. And it does. It fascinates. I'm always saving them. In fact, like, it really fascinates me. And I think it's, that focus of seeing things through your adult eyes as well, being able to now assess through adult eyes what you can let go of, the things you don't have to do that you had to do before to protect yourself or to thrive or to survive or whatever it was, and really stepping into your adult lens and going, well, actually, as an adult, I can navigate this differently now, or I don't need that, or that can come from me, or those sorts of things as well. I love
totally.
Sort of therapy sideline that we've gone down.
Always. So I can't help myself.
I'm here for it. So let's talk about your digital marketing. How did you feel about digital marketing when you started out?
It's funny. I think coming into business, coming into a profession kind of through the side door.
Yeah.
So my career pre running my business, I was in academia for a while. I was working at an art gallery. I worked at a creative summer camp in the US. So I always had my finger in most creative pies. And then it wasn't really until I seriously started to work as a copywriter in the creative agency landscape that I started to actually understand what marketing is. And so I kind of came into the job being like, I don't even know what that means. And then it's like, oh, it's just letting people know what you do and asking for sales. It's like, okay, cool. On a very, very basic level, right? So I had to first come to terms with this idea of oh, I solve problems, as opposed to the more creative, the more artistic way of thinking, which is I express things and I create spaces for people to understand and come to terms with things. Similar but different, right?
Yeah.
Because when you train as an artist, oftentimes money is the last thing that they talk about, which is such a pain, because artists need to be we can learn so much from business about how to talk about who we are and what we do and why our work is important. It's often why the arts are so underserved, is because the marketing efforts are often focused too much on the work rather than on the value of the work.
Yeah, amazing.
So there's I've kind of come at it from a very different lens. So when I started my business, I was like, okay, there's so many things I have to learn. And I didn't realize, I think probably until only really recently, that, I can actually harness my personality and who I am as a way to talk about what I do. It doesn't always have to be so overt in terms of sales. I don't have to be buy this, do this, blah, blah. You can teach as a form of selling. So I think that's kind of where I've sort of I'm starting to find my groove in terms of marketing, is leaning more on the education, the value, and that kind of content, rather than buy my webinar, sign up to my webinar, which I think people are starting to get a bit fatigued by. But for some people, they love that, and I love that for them, and that works, and it does work. But for me, I've always felt really, really deeply uncomfortable about being super, I guess, forward, or maybe forward's not the right word, but too overt in my marketing. I've always much preferred to give people something to think about, and then that becomes something that is the gateway into what I'm selling.
Yeah. That makes total sense, and I think I think it always comes back to alignment as well, because then you're going to align with those people that probably want something deeper and richer, that aren't just looking for a quick, not again, we preface, not every webinar is a quick fix, not every, sales push is that, but it's just a different sort of person. And given what your, what your area of expertise is deeper. You do need to take someone on a longer journey, and a quick 5-minute download isn't probably going to nail someone off the cuff. They need to experience you, resonate with you, feel that alignment, and then they'll be ready, to probably self-serve and find that next step. Oh my gosh, I've followed you for 2 months and everything you say is exactly what I need. What can I do? How can I work with you? And that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. My clients are a really long burn, which is why I still do the copywriting work in the side.
Yeah.
Like I have some people that have followed me for like a year and a half before they're actually ready to commit to themselves and to commit to that next phase, because you're right, it's not like, I'm not just talking tactics here. This is some really deeply emotional traumatic stuff. But that being said, that's also why I'm creating these self-care tools, because I still want people to have something to be able to begin that journey. And it's a lifelong trajectory that we put ourselves on when we decide to embrace our creative selves. So, and that takes time, and it takes time to process that. So I think my experience of digital marketing has gone from what tools do I need? What strategies do I need? What do I have to have in place? To, okay, what safety and consistency can I create for the people that need me the most, in order for them to believe that I'm going to be there when they need me. And so for me, what that looks like is creating spaces that I can feed, spaces that I can create almost like little worlds within, rather than just like, the 30-day content plan on Instagram. It's like creating these little bubbles. Like I've got my newsletter, which is called The Creative Urge, which is very much these very short bite-sized emails I do every Monday that also talk, like I will just casually drop in other things that I'm doing into that. And I've just been getting so much amazing feedback, and that's been growing really quickly, which is lets me know that I'm onto something, right?
Yeah, true.
And then, I've got my podcast, which is like, for me, that's a really slow burn, because it's one of those things that I like to take a bit of time around thinking and planning and making sure that I'm delivering something that is going to be actionable and worthy of 30, 45 an hour of someone's time. I don't take that lightly, right? And I think that's the difference between people who do the churn and burn model and are just, blast, versus, creating content that's not just relevant, but is also original and speaks to who you are, not just what you're trying to do. So it's been I've had a very complicated relationship with marketing, as I'm sure a lot of other creatives do, especially when you are in the business of commodifying creativity. It can get a little tricky.
Yeah. And also because I think, and again, I don't consider myself, for better or worse, to be a creative person. I know
we can argue about that later.
I know, all day long. But I think, from what I admire in, let's call them true creatives, is there is an introspection, and there is almost a need to withdraw, to be able to really create something that's so self-expressive and possibly vulnerable, or there is an introspection and that need to withdraw, and trying to marry that up with giving yourself pressure that you need to be present on digital marketing and talking about the next big thing and the next, like, they're two opposite ends of the scale.
Yeah, they really are. And there's always that tension, I think. And I think it's reflected in the nature of creative business. You have the creative and the data, right? There's always these opposing forces, between what what you want to work versus what you need to express. And I think that runs through everything that I do, and has been the source of my greatest pleasure and my greatest pain at the same time, is constantly fighting, having that internal battle. But the good thing is like, as and I think this comes with age and also developing that's the self-awareness around your identity and how you play as a business owner, is that when I feel that urge to withdraw, I don't fight it anymore. You know, and I do things like when I'm in a really good mood and when I've got lots of ideas, I will really fight to carve out the time to bulk create a shitload of content so that then I have something there. So if I know I need to withdraw, I can just pop up one or two things that, you know, or I'll be really, really blunt about it and say, oh, these last few weeks have been really, really full on. I'm going to take a few steps back. And I think, it's perfectly fine to do marketing and do business either way, but you've got to communicate, right? And at its core, marketing is about communication. So I think as long as we are open and honest with the people around us about what we're going through, it doesn't affect your audience too much, because they know and they respect it, because then that gives them the permission to do the same.
Yeah, and there's role modeling in that, you know, because you mentioned earlier that you really want to bring in a self-care element into the work that you're doing, and that, you know, that's perfect role modeling, to be showing people that might not work with you for a year already that it's okay. It's okay to say, I'm stepping back. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm going to be less visible for a period, and then I'll be back. And, you know, and that's important, and that's okay. Like, the world's not going to end if, you know, I take 2 weeks off or I take a month off or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I think too, people forget that just because if I'm not online, it doesn't mean I'm not working.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm not doing stuff. You know, I think it's really easy to conflate the online world with what's happening in, you know, quote unquote reality. And that's why, you know, these platforms can be really dangerous. It's because they give you that illusion of, like, you know, that's the illusion of perfection, the illusion that somebody's just like crushing it and building their empire, but they could be hashtag crushing it. But they could legitimately be having a nervous breakdown, and you just wouldn't know, because they programmed that content 2 months ago.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. It's
tricky.
No, it's so true. And I think it's fine to have a break and be doing nothing if that's what you need to be doing as well. You know, often it is when we get the busiest with work that then, you know, the digital stuff falls away. I know sometimes I think, oh my gosh, I don't think I've actually physically gone on and commented on something or liked something in, you know, 4 or 5 days. And that could be a business, you know, really busy time, or it could be a personal time where it's like, oh, and sometimes I'm really thankful for that. You know, I have that thing of, oh God, I haven't gone and engaged. And then I think, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, that's kind of cool that 4 days went by and I wasn't compelled to do that. That kind of feels nice, that it's not my air, you know, that I need to breathe it.
Totally. And I love that perspective too. And I speaking of seeing things online and liking and commenting, I caught a really short snippet of someone's story today where they were talking about if you aren't consumed with your life, life will consume you. And so I think there's this idea, you know, that we have to be, or that it's good to be, you know, across every single thing that's happening online. But all you're doing there is consuming, and every second that you're consuming, you're not creating. Because you can't do them at the same time. And so I think, giving yourself the permission to step away, even if it's just for, you know, a couple of days. I often find that the second I put my phone down and have like at least a 12-hour break, that's often when my biggest and best ideas formulate and actually come together, or I hear the answer to a problem that I've been consciously focusing on, which, you know, to bring us back to that incubation process. You know, it's when we're doing those lightweight tasks and we're stepping away and in the car, in the shower, washing the dishes, that's often when we'll solve the world's problems. You know, it's not when we're actually looking them directly in the eye.
Pen to paper, right. I'm solving the world's problems. Let's go, brain.
World peace, go. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. Not even for the greatest thinkers of our times. You know, often it's when they're in conversation with someone and they, you know, have this concept of creative collisions. It's often when we collide with the brain of another person and they feed into what we're talking about, that something new is formed. And like, that's the creative moment. So And I mean, that's why we often get so inspired when we look at other people's feeds and other people's stories. It's not necessarily because what they're doing is better than us, but what they're doing has activated something within us that we've been searching for.
Yeah.
So, and that's the inspiration piece, because that word inspire means literally to breathe new life into. So when we see something that does that, it just elevates us, but it's a fine line between that and comparison.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Talking of self-care, speaking of self-care. And I think, I think the comparison thing is quite interesting as well. I think I'm not sure who, somebody recently kind of touched on, what, maybe it was Suze or maybe it was yourself, Suze Chadwick, but, when you're feeling that comparison, like what is it in them that you're actually envying, and how can it either be healthy envy, or what does it say about what you want for yourself? You see that successful vision, let's call it a projection, because we don't know if it's a reality, and you think, this, her. But what is it? Is it that she's 10 steps ahead of you? Is it that she's, creating something or speaking confidently when you're still, holding your tongue? Like, looking for that lesson for yourself in that comparator. I can't say it. Comparing. I want to do the itis one.
Yes. Compare it. I can't even say it either. Never mind. No, but you're right. Yeah. Comparator.
Yeah.
You're so right. And I feel like when you are in a place where especially when you're trying to bring something new to life, and if you take in too many things around you, it can, if you don't know what to do with that information, it can be very damaging. Yeah. However, if you consciously decide to become the scientist of your creative practice and go, okay, well, like if I'm watching, when I watch my, this person, I get really excited. Well, why is that? What is it about? Is it what they're saying? Is it how they're saying it? Is it, is it the, the visuals, because there's so many different things that it could be. And I think the really easy path is to take the lower road and be like, and just brush it off and dismiss it and be like, they've just probably got a team of 12 behind them, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
But we can actually, use this to our advantage, like you're saying, and recognize, actually, maybe this is something that I need to work on, or maybe this is something that I actually want when I thought I wanted that thing over there. So it could change. It could change
absolutely.
too.
And I think, like, sometimes there's just switching off. If that person's story is triggering you and you've pulled it apart and you don't think it's because it's what you really, you can't really put your finger, but every time you see their stories, just don't see them anymore. Like we're all at the ultimate control. I've had clients over the years where I've had to say, I think you need to stop looking. Like, I think you need to stop looking at this person's account because it's not serving you. It's, all it's doing is making you zig and zag from who you are and what you want because you think they've nailed it. But they're not even operating in a way you want to operate in. Like, you just need to let it go.
I'm so glad that you give people that advice, and this is where we can really learn from the artists of the world. And there's a reason why they go and they disappear into their studio for 6 months and don't talk to anybody. It's so that they can actually do the work. You can't do your best work when you're constantly receiving the ideas, thoughts, opinions, and strategies of other people. There has to be a moment at which you go, you know what, my inspiration bank is full. I'm going to go and I need to digest. You don't keep eating when you're full. If you do that, you're going to throw up. Well, you will throw up eventually. At some point you have to go, actually, I'm going to put my knife and fork down. Yeah. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to walk away, right? I'm going to walk away from the buffet at some point, hopefully. And that the same applies to our marketing and the work that we do. Everything, when we're too saturated, we just don't take anything in.
That's so true. And I think when it comes to artists, that need to kind of lock themselves away is also that worry of being too inspired and then, not being original. And I think in the digital marketing landscape, you often see things and you think, that sounds like so-and-so, or that sounds like so-and-so. And what's happening is we're over-consuming, and then we're almost sort of rehashing other people rather than finding that true original message as well.
Oh, absolutely. One of my biggest bugbears is when people try to lean too hard on templates,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to copywriting. I think structure is really important, but when people often come to me and they're like, I want this kind of sale page because so and so did it this way and they said that it works.
Yes.
I'm like, yes, that's a great place to start, but also, is that what you're about?
Yeah.
No, and it might be, and that's fine. And we need to sense check all these decisions so that we don't end up becoming just, a carbon copy of
Absolutely.
whoever else we've been following.
Yeah. Yeah. With missing the broader context of who we want to talk to and also what we want to be known for. And I've had that exact same experience where I think and it goes through phases. It'll be like this.
Yes.
I remember when it was it like even like 5 or 6 years ago, Amy Porterfield. And it was like every single coach sent me Amy Porterfield's landing, like, this is what I want for my landing page. It's like, well, then why wouldn't your client just go to Amy Porterfield? Like, but it's so true. And I think that mix of taking time, taking space, and letting your true message come out, obviously getting comfortable with that is going to give you the most reflective presence of who you are and what you want to achieve.
Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking a template and adding to it. The creative moment doesn't have to be, you don't have to come up with this stuff from scratch. You don't have to market in a way that no one's ever seen before. Like, I think that's like too far the other way, right? Like, I'm still cutting edge that nobody even really knows what I'm talking about, right? Like, you don't have to be that opaque. But I think even just taking it and, sprinkling on a bit of your personality, whether that's in your copy or your photographs or your videos, or even just the fonts that you use and the colors that you use, I think there's so much room for like small tweaks to these things. But yeah, I think there's definitely a danger in just like rinsing and repeating the things that you've seen before. Which will probably work once, but chances are like then you're kind of stuck, right? Because you don't know how to evolve it. And then that's where the real skill is, I think, is evolving that message, evolving that approach so that it grows along with your audience as you teach them and as they get better.
Yeah, totally. So I guess I feel like we've kind of gone through challenges and learnings. What is your piece of advice? And I feel like we've kind of touched on it throughout as well. But, if you were going to give the business owners that listen to this podcast that advice for finding their feet with their digital, being more confident with their digital, what would that be?
I think it kind of comes back to finding your voice. I think that's a hugely underrated thing to possess.
Yeah.
Because if you do, and there's so many things that are connected to this idea of voice. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. It's what, it's the message, it's the why behind the what. Getting clear on all the things that you want to stand for. And then also taking the time to develop your creative ideas by connecting all those dots in new and exciting ways. Because if you don't take the time to do that, you become another lemming. And that's not what anybody wants, because it's not satisfying and you don't feel seen. And business is a huge opportunity to really let your freak flag fly high. So, and I'd love to see more of that happening and less of the lemmings jumping off cliffs.
Yeah, we don't want no people jumping off cliffs. Not good.
No lemmings, please.
Too many. I just have that vision of,
You know how they go, like it's probably showing our age too, because I'm like, will the kids these days know what lemmings are?
I know. Well, they understand that was a deeply satisfying game to play for like hours on end, just trying to save small yellow dots on a screen.
I know.
Up there with Minesweeper and other, amazingly fun games that we had.
So 2D.
Oh, I know. Don't worry, they'll bring it back as retro and make it their own in a couple of years, and ask us if we know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And life continues.
Yes, and the circle goes on.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's such a really enjoyable chat. I really loved that, and I love exploring. I think after meeting you, I did concede that I am more creative than I had boxed myself in as. But, I think today you've given me even more new perspectives on creativity and just thinking about that pressure. And you know, as the owner of a digital agency, I put the pressure on people to be consistent all the time. You know, you know, we're always like, consistency is king. But you know, I think at the end of the day, there is that layer that the world's not going to stop. You know, you're going to be okay. Your business won't fall over overnight if you need to take a week off, or if that means you get super clearer on what you're trying to do and can come back and present it in a new and more aligned way. Like, that's going to be more powerful than if you just, you know, splattered across for the next 2 weeks with just, you know, being consistent because someone, Mary, had told me I had to be. That devil.
So true though, you know. And I think it's about finding what consistent, or defining what consistency means for you and your business, because it will be different. And just, I'm so glad that you said that. You feel a little bit expanded, because that's the aim of creativity, is just to open the doorway to new possibilities. And there's always another way. There is always another way.
So true. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I hope we get to chat again soon.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to another episode. If you don't want to miss one, make sure you subscribe to the show in your podcast app. And if you love it, be sure to share it with friends and colleagues who you think could benefit from increasing their digital marketing confidence. Want more? Head to marionamies.com to find out how you can work with me directly, to reach out to have me speak at your event, or to grab yourself some free resources.